Have you ever thought about how the word we speak today can carry thousands of years of secrets? Imagine this, a language not just as a way to talk, but as a living diary of where people came from, how they moved, and who they became. That's the story of the Enuani people, spoken in Anioma in western parts of Igbo land in Delta State. Enuani isn't just another Igbo dialect. It's a bridge between the past and the present, between the people who crossed the rivers and the generations that followed. Today, we are going to trace the footsteps of the Igbo migrations hidden in this dialect. And trust me, by the end of this lecture today and this journey, you will never see anyone language or tongue the same way again. Have you ever heard Olu Nandeda? Where do you think Olu is? Olu are the Igbo-speaking areas around the riverine areas. Does that make them any less Igbo? No. Olu Nandeda. In the past, we usually say Jiani Olu, which is the first set of yam to come out even before the harvest and Ewaji festival of my people. We always have Jiani Olu in the market. Jiani Olu is yam gotten from the areas around the rivers. We also have a place called Olu Odu. Olu Odu. The Olu is usually used to refer to a distant foreign land close to the river. And that is where Odu, the queen of Ogwashuku, lives. That is why they have that town called Olu-Odu. Let's start with where we find ourselves in Enuani today. If you've been in towns like Ubunuku, Ibuzo, Ogwashuku, Onitsholona, Onitshubo, Iseluku, Asaba, Enuani is largely spoken in these areas. Enuani sits right there in western Igbo land, close to the river Niger. The people are Igbo, no question about it at all. The way they speak, the rhythm of our music, the accent, the expressions, and it has flavor of its own. In fact, the Ubulu version of the Enuani dialect, very, very nasalized, is spoken in places as far as Enugu-Ezike and other parts of Anambra State. In fact, there are at least over 15 Obolo communities in eastern Igbo land, as they are in western parts of Igbo land. Of course, you have them in Okwane and other parts of Enuani. And that uniqueness is not an accident. This is the result of histories, of journeys, of survival, to understand why Enuani sounds the way it is or the way it does. We need to travel back, way, way back to the ancient migrations of the Enuani people. Now we're going to look at the migration history of the Enuani people. The Igbo story has always been a story of movements, migrations across villages, across rivers, across borders, and it didn't even start yesterday. It started a very long time ago. The Igbo people have always been known as the people who migrate from place to place, bringing development, not war, to wherever they went to. Oral traditions talk about places like Nri as a strong ancestral religious center of the Igbo people. Places like Arochukwu, the spiritual and cultural powerhouses. From there, families and clans spread out. But the Igbo people did not only migrate from Arochukwu and Nri. There were Igbos who are also indigenous in other parts of southern Nigeria, particularly Ile-Ife and other parts of western Nigeria. You will recall that I always mention that my ancestor, Ezemu, migrated all the way from Ile-Ife. He is among the returning Igbos that include Ezechime, whose descendants you will hear say they are from Ado Nidu, meaning they first started in Ado in present-day Ekiti State before moving down to Idu and then finally returning towards the eastern homeland. That is why you will hear the people of Onitsha say they are Ndi Onitsha Ado Nidu. Remember, they are the children of Oheze. Oheze died before his father, Ezechime, and was buried. It was his children who crossed over to the River Niger and founded Onitsha. And then you will hear people today say that they are Bini people. They are not Bini people. They are Ndi Onitsha Adonidu, Umwa Ezechime. Twisters and relationists of history attempt to call them Ezekime, but it is Ezechima. Now let's talk about the River Niger that I talked about, that's Umuohe is a cross. Was it ever a barrier? No, it was never a barrier because there were boats, rafts, and even bare hands. People crossed and found new homes in western banks of Igbo land, as they did in the eastern banks of the Igbo land. That's how Enuani land became populated. The people who peopled the Enuani area are of three major stock. First, we have the Uno indigenous dwellers of Enuani. Yes, in this group of Igbo indigenous dwellers, you have the Umuezechima, Umuezemu. Those are the Obolo clans. The Ezechima clan, the Obolo clan, and other areas that are not even Ezechima or Obolo. Places like Iwuzo and Ahaba, who are the descendants of Kainebisi, who has its roots in Nteje, in present-day Anambra State. Now, these are the people who peopled the area now known today as Enuani. You also have the Igala group, the people who migrated from Igala to settle in Enuani, while you also have some groups who lay claim to migration from Anidu, and a very small group of people, the Onukumis, who lay claim to ancestry from Yoruba. Now, these are the groups of people who peopled the Enuani region. Archaeologists even point to pottery and settlement patterns that show communities living there for centuries. Yet, despite being separated by a mighty river, the Enuani people kept strong links with their Igbo cousins across the River Niger. Picture this: traders paddling canoe across the River Niger with yams, palm oil, kola nuts, and carrying their language along with them. Language was also not a barrier, as the Enuani language remains an intelligible, mutually intelligible version of the Igbo language. Here is a fascinating part. The language itself tells the migration story a lot. When you compare Enuani with the present-day Central Igbo dialect or other dialects of the Igbo language, you hear similarities, but also some striking differences. The tones are softer, the sounds are altered in a nasalized way, some words are even unique to the Enuani people. Such words, people will claim, are imported because languages are known to borrow to make itself richer. Take, for example, in Enuani, you may hear words like Obidema, the heart is good. In some other standard Igbo language, you say Obirema, Obidema, Obilemma. Some small differences. You hear words like Afia for a market. In the same Enuani, you hear Asia in some other parts of Enuani. You hear words like Oshia to mean bush or forest. Some will call it Ofia. Some will call it Ovia. Now, these different dialects of Igbo language are found in Enuani as it is in other areas of Igbo land. Does not make it different, but makes it unique. Linguists actually study these tiny sheets to trace how languages branch out. When groups move, settle, adopt, every difference is a breadcrumb on the trail of migration. Now, as people move from one place to another, you will expect them to pick up words to improve their diction. You will expect them to also drop a trace of their own language in the place where they had lived. So, how exactly did Enuani come to where it is today? How? Have you ever asked yourself that kind of question? One theory says they moved westward from Unri and Onitsha areas crossing the Niger in waves. Another theory also highlights mixing with neighbors. Edo, which we call Ndianidu. Some of the rebels, which we call Usobo or Isobo, and even some Yoruba people, just very few Yoruba people called the Olukumi people, about 7 communities in this area called Enuani. Now, of course, those people have been assimilated and joined to us. They now speak our version of the Igbo language. Now, all this over time shapes our history to make the Enuani dialect very rich, very diverse, and very unique. All this has shaped the dialects over time. It is also believed that Enuani may have preserved older Igbo features that disappeared in other dialects. And then there are legends, of course. One tale speaks of the first settlers crossing from the river in search of fertile land. They carried not just seeds for farming, but also the dialect of the Igbo language. Now, the very good example of this are the people of Ogbolinshi, who you will find in Ogwashuku, Ibuzo, Iseluku, Akuku Igbo. Of course, these communities that I mentioned had the people called Ndi Ogbolinshi, who are believed historically to have migrated from the other side of the River Niger, which is the eastern side of the River Niger. Now, with all this explanation, you will agree very thoroughly that the Igbos of the eastern Niger and the Igbos of the western Niger are kith and kin, inseparable. Now, whether legend or fact, these stories matter a whole lot. They remind us that behind every word we speak, there's a journey. For instance, in places like Obunuku, you have the people who call Unwiken. They are the metal workers. Some call them Unwikemozo. They have relatives in Ogbori part of Ibuzo. They have relatives in Ogwashuku. In Ubuluku, they occupy what is arguably the largest lineage. They are the metal workers, and they are undoubtedly from the other side of the River Niger. Remember, as we said earlier, the river was never a barrier because people crossed the river through rafts, through boats, through canoes, and some people who could even manually swim across the other side. People were able to cross this river, and it has never been a boundary. It is not today then that the river will become a boundary between this side of Igbo land and the other side of Igbo land. Now, there's something unique about languages. Languages are not just words. It is culture. And Enuani culture is rich with wisdom, music, and pride. Would you even believe that the Enuani music is enjoyed in faraway Ndoni in River State? Why? In faraway Omo, River State. Why? Because they can understand the language. Because it is mutually intelligible. The music we play, music of people like Tobogo, Lamas of this world, and other musicians from Enuani are widely played in that part of Igbo land in River State. Take proverbs, for example. One very popular proverb and saying in Igbo land says, Otu osisi adịghị eme ọhịa. But in Enuani here you say, Ofu osisi adagba ọfịa. Ofu oye adagba anyị. One person can never be us. The proverbs that I just listed out, Ofu oye adagba anyị, Ofu osisi adagba ọfịa, is a reminder of the Igbo spirit of community, of togetherness. And that is the very spirit that fueled the survival and migration of the Igbo people. Then there is this music, our masquerade, our dance of Egwu Amala, and the rest, our Egwu Eshusu, which is very unique to us. The one that dance like this. I hope one day I will be able to play an Enuani song and demonstrate these our dance moves. And don't forget the close bond between the Imo communities in Western Igbo land, in Enuani, and other Igbo communities in Eastern Igbo land. The relationship between Ubuluku and Ozobolo, Ubuluku and Ubulisi Uzo, Ubuluku and Ubuli Hejiofo, Ubuluku and Uburu in Oha Ozara, of Ebonyi State, and so many other Obolo communities. The relationship between the Umwedechimers and the other Edechima communities in western part of Igbo land, including Onitsha and other communities affiliated to Ezechime in Enuani and even in Okwane. Through all this, Enuani stands tall as a marker of Igbo identity. A proof that people, even as they moved, adopted and mixed with other people, can still retain their identity. The Enuani areas now becomes an example of a melting pot, a melting point of the Igbo language, because they never lost their Igbo voice. They never lost their Igbo culture, and even today are making it even loudest. So you will ask, why does any of these matter today? Because in a world where languages are fast disappearing, preserving the Enuani language simply means preserving our history. It's not just about communication. It's about keeping alive the memory of our migrations, of our resilience, of our identity, of our culture, and everything that makes us who we are. Enuani shows that Igbo language is just one, with unique diversity, and it's a powerful lesson for generations to continue to preserve what makes their language unique. The Enuani dialect is a living history. Yes, it's a living history. Every phrase, every proverb, every song, every footprint left behind by our ancestors who crossed the rivers and those who did not even cross the river to this side to found their communities, bearing words and centuries of movements, struggles, and pride, deserves to be preserved. So next time you hear someone speak Enuani, put your ears down and listen very closely. You are listening to the footsteps of history. You are listening to a version of the Igbo language, undoubtedly. If you enjoyed this journey with me, kindly hit the subscribe button, like and share this video, and as well so many other cultural videos on our platform. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for other deeper dives into African languages and traditions. If you speak Enuani or any Igbo dialect, drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know if you were able to learn something from today's video. Daalụnụ, asụsụ Igbo ga-adị. Ka esi agwa ụnụ, ọkwa m anyị na-achụkwa anyị. Thank you so much.
Hey.